I was exhausted and ready to sleep at my hotel when my boss called, demanding I return to the office by 8 a.m. I had to book a flight, pack, and get to the airport. It was too late to call my wife without waking the kids, so I asked the taxi to drop me off at home. Sneaking inside, I noticed the house was dark except for our bedroom light, where I heard my wife and a man talking. My kids were probably with relatives. Realizing my wife was having an affair, I felt sick. Remembering my grandparents' advice to stay calm, I took deep breaths. I have a bad temper, inherited from my grandfather, who warned me about its potential to ruin my life. I decided not to seek revenge, but to gather evidence. I used my new smartphone given by my employer for testing, with its clear camera and microphone, and a modified flash drive to prevent battery drain. Recording from the shadows, I captured my wife cheating, though it crushed my pride. I decided to get a DNA test for the kids. As I recorded, I overheard something that made me lose control. I rushed into the room, fought the man, and drove him out. My wife, Sheila, hid in a corner, terrified. "Come here," I commanded. I was stunned, like watching a movie unfold. Each time the beast took over, I remembered almost nothing afterward. This had only happened 4 times in my life. "Come here," I repeated. She crawled to the corner of the bed near me. "I'm so sorry, Steve. I'm so sorry, Steve," she pleaded. "I will shut up," the beast growled within me. "Do you regret those times with Danny too?" I asked, probing for more of her deceit. Sheila shuddered. I wondered how long and with how many. Her eyes were wide with horror. "Please, I'm so sorry. Do not hurt me. I am so sorry," she begged. "You're a cheating cow. You have desecrated this house, this bedroom, this bed. You betrayed your husband and your children," I declared, letting the beast's rage flow. She looked even worse, eyes wide, teeth chattering, face pale. The beast was shocked. Mentally, I patted him on the back. Strangely, it felt like he patted me back, as if he'd always protect me. "You will pack your things and leave by noon. Take all the bedroom furniture, especially this bed. Leave my things neatly on the floor. Respect my things. Understand?" I demanded. "How will I do all this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I don't care. Maybe ask your crazy brothers I lent money to. By noon," the beast roared through me. "Yes, by noon. I understand," she whispered in defeat. Sheila shook and covered her head. The beast took control, grabbed my bags, and headed to the car. I noticed Mark was gone. The beast tossed my bags into the trunk and put me in the driver's seat. Regaining control, I saw in the mirror my nose was broken, ruining my looks. I drove to the hospital. The doctors found I had a broken nose, 2 broken ribs, a possible concussion, and several bruises and puncture wounds. They wanted to admit me, but I refused since I had to be at work in 2 hours. The police were called. I told them I was the sufferer, but couldn't remember much. I insisted I was seriously injured, and the other party was fine since I didn't see Mark in the emergency room. They tested me and I was clean. As a local and employee of a major company, they let me go. One officer's sister worked at my company. I explained I was urgently called back to work. Given the economy, they didn't want to damage a big employer without cause. They trusted me, and I left. At work, I went to my boss's office. Audrey Hammer, the VP, had a full bathroom there. I showered and went to bed, still not feeling any pain. I arrived at the office and saw Steve's car. As our best troubleshooter, he was underpaid and undervalued. I wanted to change that, but it meant dealing with my older brothers who co-owned the company. Steve wasn't at his desk. I hoped he made coffee and went to my office, finding his luggage and him asleep on my couch. I admired his looks. He's one of the most handsome men I know. Unlike me, prematurely graying and looking older than my age, Steve is oblivious to his charm. I approached the sofa and gasped. His face was bruised purple and black with a metal splint on his nose. I touched his shoulder and his eyes opened, initially scary, but then gentle as usual. "Steve, what happened to you?" I asked. "Let's just say I came home to surprise my wife, but she surprised me more. Know any good divorce lawyers?" Steve replied. "Yes, Heather Alexander. She was my college roommate and owes me a favor." Audrey called Heather. "Morning, Heather. I need your help for a friend who needs a divorce lawyer. Can you see him this morning?" "Thanks. See you soon." Turning to Steve, she said, "She'll make time for you. Now, what happened?" "Audrey, we have a lot of work today. How about you sit with me while I talk to Heather so I don't have to repeat myself?" Steve suggested. "Okay, Steve. But I want the full story," Audrey agreed. Steve was the best assistant I could hope for, making this job bearable. Audrey and I worked for an hour fixing her brother's mess. The company would be twice as successful without them. Heather arrived, and I told my story, omitting details about the beast. I claimed I blacked out with rage and showed them the video. Mark asked Sheila, "Am I more important than your children?" Sheila replied, "I'm yours. I don't care about them." Heather and Audrey were shocked. I growled, "Heather, I want full custody of my kids, even if it means sacrificing our assets. I don't want to pay child support. My kids are with her parents, and I want to pick them up. Steve, I'll do my best, but even with this evidence, full custody is tough. Your wife might claim she spoke in the heat of the moment. I'll draft preliminary documents, give my card to your wife, and have her lawyer contact me. Stay calm and avoid more mistakes. Understand?" Heather looked serious. "I'm sorry, Heather. I lost control. I'll stay calm. Thanks for representing me. Audrey says you're the best," Steve said. Audrey and Heather exchanged a few words in private before Heather left. We'd been working together for a couple of hours when I suddenly got extremely nervous. I realized the beast was anxious about Sheila leaving my house by noon. I wanted to let her stay, but the beast had other plans and seemed out of control. Oh no. "Audrey, I have a personal matter to handle. It should only take an hour or two. I'm sorry, but can I leave? I'll be back as soon as I can," Steve requested. "No problem, Steve. You've been a great help. Just come back quickly," Audrey replied. I ran to my car, worried the beast might take over again. When I arrived home, there was a rental truck and Sheila's brothers moving the mattress. 2 police cars and 3 officers were also there. I grabbed my laptop and approached the police. "Officers, I have a recording to show you about last night. May I?" I asked. "Are you Steve Blaine, Sheila's husband?" the police sergeant asked firmly. "Yes, I am, Sergeant. I'll answer all your questions. Could you please watch this recording?" They seemed ready to cuff me, but the sergeant had compassionate eyes despite her tough demeanor. "Okay, Mr. Blaine, we'll watch it, but stay where you are," she ordered. "You have my word, Sergeant," I promised. I started the recording and turned up the volume. Even some neighbors watched. When Sheila's voice said, "I don't give a damn about them," Sheila dropped the box she was carrying. We all looked over as she picked up her things. I noticed a bag of white powder fall out of the box. "I saw something suspicious, Sergeant," I said. She saw it too, and ran towards Sheila, calling for backup. I remembered a scene in the recording and zoomed in on a small mirror with white powder streaks on the bedside table. I showed this to an officer who called the sergeant over. She then handcuffed Sheila, who cried and sobbed. Her brothers watched in shock. The sergeant ordered them to finish their work as 2 officers took Sheila away. "Sergeant, what just happened?" I asked. "Your wife was arrested for possession of prohibited substances. It's powder. We'll test it to confirm," the sergeant explained. "What about my children? When can I see them?" I asked, looking frantic. "Where are they?" she asked, concerned. "Probably at my wife's parents' house about 5 miles from here. These are your children. Your wife is in custody. If I were you, I'd go get them," she advised. "Of course I need to pick them up. I love them. But what if there are problems? I don't want an ugly scene in front of my kids," I worried. The sergeant's worried look cleared, and she seemed relieved. "I'll stay here until they finish, and then follow you to your relatives. There will be no violence, but I need a full statement of your injuries." "Okay. I came home to find my wife with Mark Grossberg. I recorded it for proof. When my wife said something terrible about our kids, I blacked out. The next thing I knew, I was yelling at her to leave by noon. I went to the hospital after that. I don't know how I got injured or if I hurt Mark." I handed her my hospital documents listing my injuries. She whistled. "Does anything hurt?" she asked. "Strangely, no. I know the pain will start eventually, and I'm not looking forward to it." "By the way, you have the most beautiful eyes," I replied. Feeling dizzy, I leaned against her patrol car. "Maybe I should take you to the hospital," she suggested. "I'm just tired and only slept for 2 hours. I need to pick up my kids and get back to work. We have a daycare at work, so it'll be fine," I explained. "Okay, but I'll take you to your wife's parents," she said. "Whatever you say." My soon-to-be ex-brothers-in-law were finally done. I locked the house and got into the patrol car. During the drive, the sergeant offered some advice. "If I were you, I'd get temporary custody and a restraining order against your wife, preventing her from entering the family home or seeing the kids. Right now, while she's in jail, you have control. Use this time wisely," she advised. "I will," I said. I called Heather, explained the situation, and shared the sergeant's advice. She assured me she'd handle everything by 11 tomorrow. I started calling the sergeant by her first name, Rosemary, and even flirted a bit. She gave me some strange but not hostile looks. "Aren't you too happy for someone in this situation?" she asked. "I'm going to pick up my children. I thought I wouldn't see them for weeks. I have good people helping me. Why let my wife's betrayal hurt me more than it already does? My marriage fell apart, but I'm not wasting time. I'm going to enjoy life and my kids. In other words, I'm going to stop and smell the flowers, Rose, I said, wiggling my eyebrows at her. I don't know if you're smart, crazy, need a doctor, or maybe I just need sleep, she remarked. There was no confrontation at my mother-in-law's house. Rosemary told them to give us the kids, and we left. They never liked or respected me, and I suspect they knew about Sheila's betrayal. My kids were thrilled to see me and excited to ride in the police car. Hope, my oldest at 5, wanted to hear the siren. Luke, the youngest at 3, wanted to ride on Rosemary's lap. Introducing her as Aunt Rosemary didn't help. She gave me a look full of disappointment and humor. Aunt Rosemary, are you going to come to our house? Hope asked. I can't, honey, I'm too busy, Rosemary replied. What shifts do you work, Rosemary? I asked. I work from 8 to 5 all week, she answered suspiciously. Then you can come to dinner tomorrow night at 6:30. Hope, you can show Aunt Rosemary your doll collection, I suggested. That's great, Daddy, Hope said. Steve, Rosemary began. You don't want to upset Hope, do you? Not now. I gave her an innocent look. Okay, what do you want for dinner, Hope? Rosemary asked. Chicken. We'll have chicken, Hope decided. I'm doing this for the kids' sake. You seem a bit off, so I better keep an eye on you. Should I bring anything, Hope? Rosemary asked. What should Rosemary bring? I asked Hope. Ice cream, Hope said. Rosemary stopped in front of my office building to let us out. Okay, I'll bring the ice cream, Rosemary agreed. Thank you, Aunt Rosemary, Hope said. Thank you, Luke added. Goodbye, Rosemary, I said. She waved goodbye and drove off. What am I doing? Steve could be a suspect if Grossberg presses charges. I can't believe I was sent to his house. I've always admired Steve Blaine. I thought I'd have to arrest him. I remember the first time I saw him with his kids in the park 2 years ago. He made my knees weak with his appearance, mannerisms, voice, and movement. He should be a model. Every Sunday, more women showed up at the park when he was there. We even chatted sometimes. Did you see him last weekend? He did the sweetest thing. I took pictures of landscapes, which of course included Steve, and now I was called to arrest him. Thank God things turned out differently. He said I had the most beautiful eyes and flirted with me. It's probably because he hasn't slept with anyone for a long time. I must be one of the ugliest women on the planet. I have the shape of a brick and the face of a bulldog, and he flirted with me. It's almost good his face is punched. I don't know if I could sit across from him with his usual gorgeous face. I wanted to scream like a girl meeting a pop idol. Calm down, Rosemary. His kids called me Aunt Rosemary. Do your job, Rosemary. You need to visit Mark Grossberg and get a statement. I dropped my kids off at daycare and rushed to see Audrey. My behavior was odd, possibly from lack of sleep or the beast, but I felt more persistent and flirted with Rosemary. I should be grieving my marriage, but it felt like it ended long ago. Something was blocking my pain, and I hoped it lasted. Audrey and I finished our work that day. Audrey, I think I'll be exhausted tomorrow. Can I take a day off? Sure, Steve. I might call you, but you can stay home. I'm sorry about your situation. Good night. Good night, Audrey. My broken ribs worried me the most since they could limit my mobility, and I needed to take care of my kids. We took a taxi home, and I ordered pizza for dinner. Hope and Luke asked about their mom. I explained that Mom and Dad had a big fight, but we both still loved them very much. Because of the fight, Mom would stay at their grandparents' house. It's okay, Daddy, as long as you stay with us. We are tired of staying at our grandparents' house. Both kids hugged me tightly. I realized they spent many nights with their grandparents, likely when Sheila was cheating. The beast growled inside me. That night, I found an emergency nanny service and arranged for someone to come at 7 a.m. I hid the key under the doormat, anticipating my lack of sleep and pain might make it hard to get up. I transferred most of our savings from joint accounts to my own checking account and canceled our joint credit cards. I considered emptying our safe deposit box since I had the only key, but decided to think about it. We all slept in the guest bedroom's double bed, so I wouldn't have to run down the hall if the kids woke up. This morning, Luke and Hope woke me up. Dad, someone is ringing at the door. Just then, my phone rang. Mr. Blaine, this is Gloria from the nanny service. Are you home? Yes, Gloria, thanks for coming. I'm a bit tired. I put the key under the doormat. Please come in and go upstairs. Of course. I'll come now. I heard the front door open and footsteps. The woman who came in seemed to be in her late 50s. I explained the situation. She needed to get Hope ready and take her to daycare, then look after Luke for the rest of the evening. She quickly got to work and was very warm towards the children. I rested for the day. A messenger from Heather's office delivered the temporary custody order and restraining order. Heather called to say that my wife had been served with divorce papers while she was in jail. She expected Sheila to be released that evening. Between the controlled substance charge and the record, I now had a great chance of getting full custody. While Gloria went to pick up Hope from daycare, I stopped by the bank, bought a new safe deposit box, and moved most of the contents from the old one to the new one. I only left Sheila's things in the old box at the bank across the street. I opened a new checking and savings account in my name only. I then wrote a check from my old personal checking account to my new bank savings account. Once the divorce is settled, I wouldn't mind Sheila getting half. But now I didn't want her wasting money on things like illegal substances or bail. I felt amazingly good. Although I finally felt pain, it wasn't as bad as I feared. It was my nose that hurt the most. I decided to buy some chicken from the grocery store and cook it tonight. Gloria left at 5, and to play it safe, I asked her to come tomorrow. Rosemary arrived quickly. We had a wonderful dinner. Hope asked to see Rosemary's weapon, and Rosemary carefully explained how dangerous real weapons were. I must have looked terrible to Rosemary because she kept asking about my condition. I was bad. I decided to get all the attention I could from Rosemary. She agreed to sit with us and watch a children's movie. Then I persuaded her to buy children. Then I pretended to be dizzy and asked her to sit with me during another movie. I said that I would be more comfortable if she stayed while I was so dizzy, just in case. Keep that in mind. Oh my God, I'm sweating. I've always wondered what the hell is sweat. During the second film, she told me how she interrogated Mark Grossberg. She made me promise not to tell anyone what she said. She found Mark living in a hotel in a nearby town. He was absolutely terrified of me. He said I forced him into the bathroom and attacked him without warning. Rosemary then showed him the film and the part where he apparently throws himself off the bed towards me and the camera. She then listed all my injuries and compared them to his cuts and bruises. She told him that she would be happy to press charges against me, but warned him that I might reciprocate. And if I had done this, he could very well have served time in prison. Mark decided not to press charges. I told her that since I didn't really remember what happened, I wouldn't press charges, although I would have to remember to send Mark's wife a copy of my film. Rosemary left at 11, and I went back to bed with the children. As time passed, I refused all communication with Sheila. I made her talk to my lawyer. My ribs healed in a little over 3 weeks, but my nose still hurt. I redecorated my bedroom with new paint, crown molding, and new curtains. I was finally able to buy a bedroom set that I liked. It was a massive 4-poster bed with matching furniture. Everything was made of heavy dark wood. I liked it. I tricked Rosemary into spending many evenings at my house. I haven't hit on her yet, but I was planning on doing so. I had to wait for my nose to heal. Damn, that thing hurt. Everything was going well at work. I had to spend a few nights away from home, but I was able to hire Gloria for that time. Audrey did everything she could to reduce my trips out of town. Finally, the doctor told me that my nose was fine. I pretended to be dizzy again and tricked Rosemary into staying out late during the movie. I went and got each of us a bowl of ice cream. When I returned, instead of sitting in my chair, I sat next to her on the sofa, also kind of close. We ate ice cream in silence while watching a movie. I gave her time to relax. Then I pulled her closer. She looked at me. "What are you doing today?" she asked. "The doctor said my nose is completely healed, so I don't have to worry about hurting it. That's why I'm making a pass at you now. Is that clear enough?" I replied. "Why do you want to kiss me? I'm ugly. I'm absolutely ugly," she said. I put my finger to her lips to stop her. "You're a healthy young woman my age with wonderful eyes, a lovely voice, and a fantastic personality. You take good care of yourself and stay in shape. I like you. Can we kiss now?" I asked. "But," she started, but I kissed her. We had a great time that night and never finished the movie. Unfortunately, the night ended as usual, but she agreed to come over tomorrow. I couldn't believe it. The hottest man in town wanted to see me again. I've only kissed one other guy who was old, ugly, and drunk. Things were going well with Rosemary. I mentioned that Gloria sometimes took the kids overnight, and then asked Rosemary if she was free on Saturday evening. She said yes and wanted to show me her apartment. Rosemary greeted me at the door in a dark blouse and black trousers. "Why do women always wear dark colors? What's wrong with bright, happy colors?" I asked. I gave her a bouquet of long-stemmed roses and a box of chocolates. She blushed, her eyes lighting up. I kissed her. It's been almost 2 months since I've had lovemaking, and I had an idea. "What did you cook for dinner?" I inquired. "Lasagna in the oven," she answered. Can you turn it off? I asked. Yes, please do, she responded. But, she began, but I interrupted her. Sorry, Rosemary, but I'm just too impatient, I said. We made love. Afterwards, I lay next to her and kissed her tenderly. She kissed me back, closed her eyes, and fell asleep. The lasagna was almost ruined, but still edible. I ate 2.5 large pieces, along with garlic bread, to regain my strength. She ate almost 2 pieces. Then it hit me. I'm sitting here with a gorgeous, undressed man in my kitchen. What a happy day. The lovemaking was better than I could have hoped for my first time. After eating and brushing our teeth, we cuddled on the couch and watched TV. I felt proud. Ugly old Rosemary Hoover Watkins had driven a gorgeous guy crazy. The phone rang nonstop for 15 minutes. It was my neighbor and friend Beth screaming in my ear. Rosemary, are you okay? We're all outside your door ready to break it down, but we decided to wait since you're a cop, Beth said. Honey, everything is fine. I pressed against Steve's chest. I have a friend visiting. So sorry if we disturb you tonight, I replied. Is it that gorgeous guy from yesterday? She asked. Yes, indeed it is. Steve leaned over and kissed me. Outside, I heard laughter, cheers, and whistles. Most of my neighbors were single women, and I made friends with them. As a policewoman, I protect and serve well. Tonight, I'd keep them awake. I hoped they wouldn't call the police. We made love all night and then fell asleep. When Steve woke me, he had already showered, dressed, and looked as handsome as ever. He apologized but needed to pick up his children. I smiled sleepily and said I understood. He kissed me, promising to call, and I knew he would. Exhausted, I trusted him to lock the door and went back to sleep. Well, it was a wonderful night with Rosemary. I opened the door, checked my feet, and closed it carefully, making sure it locked. Flashes of light surrounded me. 5 women, some with cameras, stood there clapping and applauding. Feeling a bit awkward, I bowed and thanked them. Then they all extended their right hands like queens. I walked down the hallway humming an old Irish tune my grandfather taught me and heard them sigh behind me. The next few months were pleasant. I didn't spend many nights with Rosemary because of Hope and Luke, but the ones I did were wonderful. However, there were 2 problems in our relationship. The worst was her emotional distance. We'd make progress, but then she'd retreat behind mental walls. The lovemaking was great, but the emotional connection was lacking. Another issue driving me crazy was her constant dark clothing. She always wore black or dark gray, sometimes a white blouse, which felt just as somber. I wanted to shake her and scream, "Dress in happy colors, stop looking like you're going to a funeral." My divorce was moving forward, and we had a date with the judge. Heather proposed a settlement, but they refused, despite her warning that they were lucky to get that offer. From Heather, I learned my wife's infidelity started about 6 months before I caught her with Mark. My ex-friend Dan invited her to a party while I was out of town, where he got her drunk and gave her illegal substances, lowering her carnal inhibitions. This led to a 2-month affair of wild parties whenever I was away. Fearing I'd find out, Dan handed Sheila over to Mark, and she continued cheating until I caught her. Sheila was convicted for illegal substance use and entered rehab, still undergoing therapy. She had a delusional idea that I'd forgive her or agree to joint custody. To convince me, she told her story to Heather and offered to have her therapist talk openly with me. Despite our unsatisfactory bed life, she willingly slept with Dan and Mark. She didn't take substances when I was home, indicating she knew she needed help but chose not to seek it. Instead, she neglected me and our children, often leaving them with her parents when I was away. My grandparents fought for 4 years to get me out of foster care after my parents died, improving their health and financial situation to gain custody. In contrast, my wife gave our children to her parents to have affairs. Her parents never liked me or our children, thinking I was too pretty and not manly enough for their daughter. They were strict with our kids, trying to toughen them up, assuming beauty meant weakness. They'll never see my children again, and my ungrateful relatives will no longer benefit from my money. The day of the divorce finally arrived. In court, we presented our evidence to the judge, who watched the video and examined both of us. She seemed to think my wife was crazy and granted the divorce under Heather's original terms. This upset Heather, but I was satisfied. My ex-wife received half of our assets and retirement accounts, but not my company pension. I had to pay her half the equity in our house. I got full custody of the children, while Sheila received 2 4-hour supervised visits per month. Neither of us paid child support. I also had to keep her on my health insurance for 5 years unless she remarried. I deducted the loans I gave to her family from her half of the assets. leaving her with about $350,000, excluding retirement accounts. She also had to pay her own lawyer and her share of legal fees. Heather didn't charge me for her services, saying she owed Audrey for all the good things she'd done for her and knew I had supported Audrey for years. Mark Grossberg left the state, and his wife filed for divorce. Dan, my ex-friend, moved across town and changed offices. When he sees me, he avoids me. Shortly after the divorce, Rosemary left me, wanting to remain friends but not seeing a romantic future. I was sad, but noticed she always held back emotionally. A couple of weeks later, she told me she met a local FBI agent. I wished her well, but we still met for lunches and occasional dinners. About a month after Rosemary and I separated, I was putting the kids to bed when I heard strange noises at the front door, whimpering and scratching. Thinking it was a lost dog, I opened the door to find Sheila leaning against the screen door, crying and scratching it with one hand. She had no coat or shoes, and it was around 1 a.m. I carefully opened the screen door and carried her inside. She was unresponsive, and I hoped it wasn't due to illegal substances. Instead of calling the police, I decided she needed warmth. I ran a hot bath, undressed her, and put her in it, remembering her preferred temperature. She used to love soaking in the bath for hours, so I set it up as she liked. I even set up the swing-arm LCD TV with one of her old DVDs, I Love Lucy, which she used to watch when she was down. I made her a strawberry smoothie and brought a bottle of water. When I returned, I gave her a straw and told her to drink. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days, so I made her a grilled cheese sandwich and chips. She ate everything and drank the smoothie, but didn't say a word. She stayed in the bath for almost 2 hours, probably fearing I would throw her out. Finally, I brought her one of my robes. I firmly told her to stand and put on a bathrobe. Then I carried her to the guest bedroom and laid her on the bed. I brought her more Lucy DVDs and another bottle of water, telling her to relax and watch some shows. We'd talk in the morning. It was good that tomorrow was Saturday. I took her clothes to the laundromat and washed them. Then I fell asleep, wondering what was going on. In the morning, I decided to have the kids wake up Sheila. At 9, I took them to her room, telling them I had a surprise. They were excited to see their mother. Hope stood by the bed while Luke climbed on top of her. Sheila woke up to their cries of, "Mommy, Mommy." She held them close, expressing her love as if she hadn't seen them in years, despite recent supervised visits. They kissed, hugged, and tickled each other. It was sweet, but I couldn't forget her betrayal. Eventually, they calmed down and Sheila offered to cook them breakfast. They eagerly agreed, and she looked at me for permission. I nodded. I decided to give her more time with the kids, knowing they would soon want to watch TV or play a game. When they did, I sat down with Sheila at the kitchen table to talk. "Sheila, you can't stay here forever. I need to know what's going on." "Steve, my family never liked you. They thought you were too soft. If they saw you that night with Mark, they would have been terrified. They always mocked us, assuming you were cheating with all your business travel. I know that's not true, but I started to believe it. That night, Dan seduced me into a life of pills and lovemaking, and I lost sight of being a good mother and wife. My therapist is still helping me understand how I got here, but you probably don't care. At my parents' house, they exploited me, giving me all the heavy work and convincing me to lend them money. 2 days ago, I found out my father was writing checks from my account and gave my car to my brother without my knowledge. I feel like an idiot for trusting them and betraying you. First, we'll go to the bank, then file a police report. You don't have to press charges, but it might prompt them to return your property. Steve, Sheila, you listened to them and ruined your life. You're the mother of my children. Listen to me now, okay?" We got in the car and went to the bank. Luckily, Sheila found an old pair of dirty garden shoes. Otherwise, she would have been barefoot. She still didn't remember losing her shoes, having simply run away from her parents' house. At the bank, we discovered her father had stolen almost $100,000, leaving her with only $250,000. We then went to the police station, and I asked to speak with Detective Rosemary Watkins. She was surprised to see me with Sheila. We explained the situation, and she promised to look into it. Sheila's parents started calling me in a panic, but Sheila refused to talk to them. I had no problem being tough. All of Sheila's property was returned, including her car. They also had to pay back $25,000 immediately and signed a loan document for the remaining $75,000 over 10 years at 12% interest, using their home as collateral. After that, Sheila wanted nothing more to do with her parents or brothers. "Steve, thank you for your help." I'm glad to see the mother of my children in a better place. Steve, I hurt you badly and still need therapy, but can I stay in the guest room to reconnect with my family? Sheila, I have an offer, but you might not want it. You caused me severe emotional trauma. If you stay, you must help around the house and take care of the children. I'll set strict rules to rebuild trust. Think carefully before accepting. Sheila flinched. I suggested she seriously consider it and discuss it with her therapist. Steve, please believe me, I truly regret my past actions. Sheila, I can't trust you anymore. One more thing. If you accept, the house will be under video surveillance. This will be hard for you, so don't accept lightly. Sheila accepted, though her therapist was against it. We agreed she would continue therapy. I set up a separate room for her and established strict rules. She went back on birth control and bought clothes of my choosing. I paid her a salary for housework and childcare, which the kids liked. I reconnected with Sheila without emotional attachment and kept strict limits. I confided in Audrey about my situation with Sheila. Audrey wasn't worried about Sheila, but about me, fearing my chaotic life would prevent me from finding true love. I told her about a woman I was interested in who was currently unavailable and that I had a plan for the future. Audrey felt relieved that I wasn't trapping myself with Sheila. Despite loving Steve, I saw him make some foolish decisions. However, he was more effective when he had a stable relationship. During the period between Rosemary leaving and Sheila's return, Steve wasn't as competent as usual. He was still better than most, but not at his usual high level. There was a tension in his eyes that was unsettling. Watching Steve is one of my few pleasures, and seeing him with those bruises was tough. The tension in his eyes now seemed even worse, so I should probably stop complaining about his personal life. I hope he finds happiness with the new woman he's interested in. When my brothers and I inherited the company, each got 25% of the shares, with another 25% sold publicly. Over the years, I bought back shares, increasing my stake to over 35%, while my brothers owned less than 20%. Steve's job was to secure another 16% of the vote to help me replace my older brother as CEO of Hammer Inc. He first secured the employees' 7% vote, as they knew who made the corporation successful. Steve's charm was effective in winning over the women who controlled more than half of the remaining shares. The transition was bloodless, and my brother retired to the Caribbean. I finally rewarded Steve with bonus checks and a promotion. Though I couldn't make him president, the deserving manager took that role. I invited Steve to dinner at a Hilton restaurant with the best prime rib in town. I told him, "Steve, we did it. You've been wonderful and a great help for many years." As we sipped wine, Steve looked at me with a strange tension, like he was about to jump out of a plane. "Besides the huge bonus check, I'd like you to accept the position of vice president. Audrey, you're doing a wonderful job running the company without interference. I know you'll be a huge success. As for the position, I'm very sorry, but I can't accept it." My stomach cramped and I almost choked on my wine. "But Steve, why?" Maybe he was upset about not being offered the presidency. As I mentioned, there's a woman who interests me. Our company policies prevent me from pursuing her, so I'll have to quit. He must be interested in another Hammer employee. I can change the rules if necessary. I'm not losing Steve. 2 weeks ago, in anticipation of my future romance, I stopped all physical closeness with Sheila. She pretended to be disappointed, but was actually relieved. I've also had a complete physical exam and am free of all illnesses, so now I feel ready to start the chase. Why is he telling me this? I can't let him go. Why is he holding my hand and looking at me so intently? Why? Oh God. "Audrey, darling, would you like to dance?" Stevie suggested the Hilton for its prime rib and arranged everything so we'd have a dance there. He set me up. He slowly lifted me from the chair. I was completely shocked. "You? Steve, I'm much older." "Shh. You're the one I want. Please dance with me." So we danced, and I didn't want it to end after 4 songs. The food on our table was cold. Steve looked at me kindly. "They actually have room service here, but we don't have a room. Please don't think badly of me, but I've been looking forward to this for some time." He showed me the room key card. Then this best negotiator in the world kissed me. I'd make him CEO. I followed him to the elevator and we went to the room and made love. "Steve, I love you. Steve, I love you. Steve, I love you." Steve confessed his love to me. I've always had a crush on Steve, but was too scared to admit it. I thought I was too old and too ugly, and that Steve was too great. Now Steve tells me he loves me. Don't wake me up. He is a magnificent, wonderful, kind, and smart man who loves me. I was the essence of his joy. On Monday, I called an emergency board meeting with the president. I announced that Steve had resigned. They were shocked and alarmed. The board, composed of women, considered meeting Steve the highlight of their visits. I explained that Steve had been romantically involved with an employee and quit to pursue his love interest. Everyone appreciated Steve's honesty and integrity, but agreed the company needed him, so the policy must be changed immediately. Steve would be offered my old job. Mary, the new president, looked at me suspiciously. "Audrey, you didn't say who Steve is in love with. You two are very close. If he told anyone, it was you, so who is it?" The room full of Steve's fans turned and stared at me. I answered quietly, "Me," and they all screamed, thrilled for me. For 3 months, Steve and I made love whenever we could. He was wearing me out with his high drive and stamina, but I was determined to take care of him. He admitted that since catching his wife cheating, he had become a carnal beast. I needed to keep up. He was my man, and I would take care of him. We were discussing marriage when the pregnancy test showed a positive result. Nervously, I told Steve I had lied about the pills. He was overjoyed and wanted to marry me. I was ecstatic. We had a small but elegant and expensive wedding at the Hilton with around 100 guests. Hope was the flower girl, Lukey was the ring bearer, Heather was my bridesmaid, and Rosemary was Steve's best friend. The judge from Steve's divorce attended and joked about never wanting to see us officially again, smiling widely. I bought the family estate from my brother when he retired, and Steve's entire family, including Sheila, moved in after the wedding. I allowed Sheila to stay because I didn't want Hope and Luke to feel deprived of their mother. Sheila continued working as a maid, nanny, and mother, but with a big pay raise. She still wore the colorful clothes Steve insisted on. I also changed my wardrobe to bright colors, which made me feel more carefree. Sheila's longing looks at Steve were heartbreaking, but he refused to believe she loved him. At 4 months pregnant, I struggled to take care of Steve, and even before showing, I was already falling behind. The tension returned to Steve's eyes, and he wasn't in the best shape. It seemed like it wouldn't take long to upset him. I had a radical idea. I needed a striker, and I had an obvious substitute in the dugout. Steve's love for me was unwavering. I talked to Sheila and came up with the idea of Steve filling in for me while I'm busy with pregnancy and childbirth. To say she was enthusiastic would be an understatement. I warned her that I had to talk to Steve about it first. Steve felt terrible and heartbroken that he couldn't control his desires. He felt like a failure as a husband. The man was crying, and I'd never seen him cry before. I cried with him. I told him how I felt like such a failure for not being able to take care of my man. He made me promise that I would still love him if he took advantage of Sheila. He also made me promise that I would have complete control over his inner beast. In the 7th month of my pregnancy, Rosemary came to us in tears. Over the past year, Rosemary had become a close friend. She collapsed into my arms. Who had hurt this tough cop? She didn't want to talk to Steve, but she decided to trust me. It turns out her loving boyfriend was not what he seemed. To her horror, she agreed to some of his wishes before regaining her pride. In retaliation, he exposed her behavior to his superiors, ruining her professional reputation. I knew what to do. I called Heather and gave her Rosemary's ex-boyfriend's name and told her what needed to be done. As for Rosemary, I had been thinking for a while that my corporation should have a corporate security department. I would hire her as its new leader and have her create it. 2 problems solved in one go. I liked it. Heather sued this stupid joker for everything he owned or would own for the next 20 years. He was out of work within 6 weeks. Rosemary was doing well in her new job, but she was emotionally depressed at home. I persuaded her to move in with us. She had such a melancholic look when she saw Steve. Finally, I asked her why she left him. She said she didn't feel worthy of him. What nonsense. 8 months into my pregnancy, and Steve hasn't experienced any real love in 3 months. Sure, he had a physical relationship with Sheila, but it wasn't love, and he needed love. I discussed this with Rosemary. She was skeptical and worried it would damage my marriage. I've known Steve for almost 8 years. I trusted him. He was honest and didn't lie. I turned the switch. If I thought things were getting out of control, I would tell him to stop, and he would stop. Simple as that. Then I talked to Steve, and he was even more concerned than Rosemary. It took a lot of persuasion, but in the end, I convinced him. Can you imagine a wife having to persuade her husband to sleep with someone else? Steve also worried that I might want to sleep with someone else someday. He wasn't going to do this. I told him that would never happen. He is exactly the man I need. So Rosemary joined Steve's harem. The change in her was amazing. I encouraged her to change her taste in clothes. She switched to bright colors and even wore a dress around the house. This made Steve happy. And when Steve is happy, he makes me and everyone else happy. God, I'm a happy woman. I thought I would be a childless old maid. Now I have a baby on the way, 2 stepchildren, a great husband, and maybe a couple of sisters instead of those useless brothers. A year later, Steve was furious. His life was completely out of control. He loved it, but felt so guilty about it. Between Audrey and the Beast, it seemed like he had little to say about his personal life. The Beast loved Audrey. He needed someone to talk to, get advice from, and take back control. Steve's mind was still in turmoil over the change. His heart was opening up to Sheila again, and he was so afraid of it. Because of the Beast, Steve had difficulty getting outside help. So instead of talking to anyone, Steve decided to write it all down. Well, the Beast had a weakness. When Steve was with his kids, the Beast left Steve alone, and he wasn't completely under control. Steve was going to take advantage of this weakness. Another day, another dollar, I thought with annoyance. I must be the unluckiest psychiatrist in the country. I have 2 meetings today. The guy who called a while ago seemed crazy. I hope I can help him. It was time to get back to earning money. I opened my latest romance novel. My publisher wanted it written in 2 weeks, and I had 30,000 words left. The phone rang, startling me. Janice, my secretary, said my 2 o'clock was here. She seemed more than a little out of breath. I was forced to get up from my office chair. The man who entered was carrying a child in his arms, but he was absolutely great. I wanted him to be on the cover of my next novel. I tried to put a professional expression on my face again. Come on, Margaret, wipe the drool off your face and pay attention. Dr. Huff, I'm Steve Blaine, and this is my daughter, Victoria. I walked around my desk to coo at the baby. Not many people let me play with other children. He looked down at her with such love and tenderness. This man seemed perfect. Why could he be here? What can I do for you, Mr. Blaine? Please call me Steve. I have an unusual problem. I don't know if I have a split personality or not. I wrote a diary or a story of my life, if you will. It will probably take you some time to read it. Of course, charge me for this time. But please read this, and maybe we can meet at the same time next week. He looked at me with such despair. Hell, I'd give him my kidney if he asked. Of course, Steve, it will be fine. Same time next week? Over the course of a week, I read Steve's story. In fact, I read it at least 5 times and also looked at the photographs he included with the diary. Nowhere in this story did he describe the women in his life as less beautiful. I looked at one photo that was actually one of those family Christmas cards that people make that I would never have had the chance to take. It showed Steve sitting with 3 women, 2 children, and 1 infant, probably Victoria. They were depicted sitting on or next to a sofa. To his left sat an elderly woman, rather plain-looking, with Victoria in her arms. To his right was a woman who was completely unattractive and clearly pregnant. On the floor at his feet sat a woman in a pink maid uniform. She was also somewhat plain-looking. She was pregnant and had 2 children with her. I couldn't believe this picture. For many nights in a row, I hung this photo on the mirror in my bedroom. I looked at her and looked at my face. Looked at her and looked at my face. Hell, I was no uglier than the woman. To Steve's right, how did she get so lucky? Steve was back again the following week with Victoria. From his story, I understood why. Steve, you're talking about the Beast. I know you had a bad time in foster care. The Beast is probably a development from those times when you had your final shock. The Beast woke up. But in all your descriptions of the Beast's actions, it doesn't seem like he wanted to hurt you. The Beast seems to be more of a protector. I don't know if the Beast is just a hidden aspect of your personality or if it represents a real schism, but I think you should stop demonizing him. Give it a different name. Respect it. I think you're right. He was my protector. Cruel, but I kind of liked it. What name would you suggest giving him? He gave me a smile, and I felt my face warm up. What about Bob? It's a friendly name. Who ever heard of a monster named Bob? He closed his eyes for a moment, deep in thought. I think Bob likes his new name. He chuckled. What a wonderful laugh. And I'm pretty sure he likes you too, Dr. Ho. I felt my face turn red at these words. Most of my patients wouldn't even look me in the eyes. They found me so repulsive. In fact, I didn't have many patients because of my appearance. They had 1 consultation with me and then found another therapist. Steve never refused to look me in the face. There was never a hint of disgust on his handsome features either. Steve, are you saying that you have a new position? Yes. Audrey said that my skills as a troubleshooter would be wasted as vice president. I really think she hated all those late nights. So I was promoted to board member and am also a special assistant to both Audrey and the president. My work week is only 30 hours or less. I have to admit that I like it. This gives me more time to spend with my family. Both Audrey and Mary, the company president, assure me that I am making a valuable contribution to the company. The next week, Steve was completely desperate. Audrey wants to bring another woman into our house because she's pregnant again, and Rosemary and Sheila are due to give birth in a couple of months. She's afraid that I won't be taken care of. This nonsense needs to stop. That's not how you do that in polite society in this country. Steve, I understand that you are upset. I would like your permission to go and talk to Audrey. She loves you. I'm sure we can come to an understanding. He had a frightened expression on his face. Audrey is the best thing that could happen to me. You can talk to her, but please don't ruin everything for me. I'll do my best, Steve. Everything was completely out of control. I could lose my license over this. But something had to be done, I thought. As I pulled up to Steve's house, I knew he was out of town, and that would give me a chance to talk to Audrey about Steve. She had already agreed to meet with me. I spoke with Audrey for several hours, outlining Steve's concerns. Audrey understood that they were breaking many societal barriers, but now she loved her life. If society didn't like it, they could just shut up. Audrey, I appreciate your attitude, but Steve is a very kind person. He thinks he's taking advantage of you all. He believes he's cheating on his marriage vows. We'll need to work on Steve to convince him that you're all genuinely happy with the situation. I think it would be better if he had frequent and even daily therapy with someone who was top of their class, I said quietly. A smirk appeared on Audrey's face. What exactly are you trying to say, Margaret? I can call you Margaret, can't I? Steve told me you're looking for a new woman. I'd like to apply for that job. I said the last part so quietly that I thought Audrey wouldn't hear, but her grin grew even wider. Next Christmas. Merry Christmas from the Blaine family. There were 4 women in the picture with Steve, all beaming. 3 women held children and 1 was pregnant. The 4th woman didn't have a child, but she was clearly pregnant too, and her smile was the biggest of them all. Audrey, honey? Yes, Steve? Judge Grant from our wedding has been appearing often lately. Are we in some trouble? Oh no, Steve, no problem. But you see, we're all pregnant again, and we have to take care of you and Bob. So I talked to Bethany Grant. She's been interested in you for a long time.